Hey, brother.
Hey,
How you
how
doing?
you doing, man?
Man, fantastic. How are you, bro?
Doing good, thanks.
Mate,
Do you want this? Let's see. Trying to think how to situate this. Do you like it like a vertical screen or do you like
yeah.
it horizontal?
Mate, just like that is absolutely
Like,
spot on.
okay, not like this.
Yeah, not like a bit, not like a little bit crooked like that. Nah, that's that's
I
sick,
just never
brother.
know, like, because yours it looked like it was sideways, so I didn't know if I should have mine sub it.
Oh, no, I've got mine sideways, but it's like super wide, so it kind of crops me in like this. This is
Yeah, you got hella space in there. That looks like a good little spot.
yeah, I've got my kit behind me. This is where I teach drums here
Dope.
mainly. But yeah, it's
Oh,
a good
cool.
spot, man. Likewise, is this in your place where you're at right now?
Yeah, this is like just like where my kid is set up to rehearse. Like,
There
so
it
yeah,
is.
same kind of thing.
That is
Yeah.
so sick. So that's your like home setup. Like, how often are you jamming in there?
It kind of depends, you know. I mean, these days it's like if I'm fresh off tour, I'm hardly out here. If
Yep.
I'm prepping for tour, I'm
Yep.
out here every day.
Yep.
If I'm just inspired, I'm out here. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, I mean, back in the day, it's weird because it was like drums were like eating. It was just something I did every day and didn't think about it. It wasn't
Yep.
like you had to schedule a time or anything, you know, like
Yep.
it was just you do it because you love it. And now it's like it's interesting because I have like so many hobbies
Yeah.
that I kind of spread myself thin and I find
Yeah.
myself doing a million things all the time, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'm
uh,
hearing you. I do the same, man. I've got this set up, and like after I tour or whatever, I won't play for ages. I'll teach drums, and then I just bounce out of here.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I've just started practicing again last night, like properly. So
Rad.
yeah, back into it. But
Are you like a do you like practice or is that just playing drums?
nah, playing drums, like learning songs. Like I'm playing.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a gig with my old band, who the Used actually played with, who I'll ask you about.
Okay.
But we haven't played for like 5 years, and some of the stuff's like it's hard. It's really hard, and it's
Yeah.
physical. Like because I play hip hop a lot of the time, and there's lots of space between songs and stuff. But you know, when you're playing punk rock or harder stuff, it's physically like draining,
Yeah.
bro. So
A little more demanding.
yeah, I gotta build
Yeah.
back up. Um,
That's awesome.
Mate, that's so sick to see. Like that's where you practice. That's a great space.
Yeah, it's a good little spot. I mean, it was all kind of unintentional. Like this house where I live, everything was not what I expected. I had like a dope proper like studio space in my old house, and then I ended up just I don't know. That's a long story, but
Yep.
all of that stuff's in storage, waiting for me to get a different house that I'm in the process of.
Hmm.
And so this is kind of my secondary setup.
Yep.
And so I was like, all right, I need a space. So let's create a space where I can work and kind of vibe out. And
Yeah.
so
Perfect.
we did exactly that.
Yeah, mate. That's awesome. I was watching some videos on you. You know, I always watch videos and listen to songs and stuff whenever I'm interviewing people. And I watched that Zildjian. It was a Zildjian piece. I forget what it was called, but it was about all of your hobbies and stuff like that you do outside of
Oh
drumming.
yeah, yeah. It was like something about passion play.
Yeah, bro, that was so
Yeah.
sick. That was a great
Oh,
bit of
cool.
content. That was sick.
Thank you. That
Um,
was fun because it was like one of the first ones. They had only done a couple
mm,
with my dear friend Sarah that was with Zildjian for so long.
yep.
And yeah, we had such a good time, but it was funny because we were trying to cram in so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like they had like 2 days here or something. And we're like, all right, we're taking you out to the sand dunes. We're going to have a skate session. We're going to go hit a lake. We're going to like, we were like cramming in so much stuff. And we were literally like chasing the daylight on some of the days, trying to like, you know, we were avoiding storms the day we were out on the lake because it was just crappy conditions. And the day we went to the sand dunes, we were like out of daylight by the time we got there because we were
Right.
exploring like caves on our way there that we were just
Uh-huh.
showing them the space.
Hmm.
And like, dude, it was just funny, but it was rad that it came out as well as it did because we were literally like chasing after everything.
Yeah, it turned out awesome, and it was funny. I did watch a couple of them, and they were all amazing. But your one was like action packed. It was like boom, 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 next activity, next, because everyone had like one or two other things, and you had like just like a list of stuff. I was like, oh my god.
Oh, and we had hockey in there too.
Yeah,
I had a hockey game.
Yeah,
Holy shit, that's
and
right.
you got sent off for being aggressive or whatever.
I'm a shit hockey player, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm just having fun with it. But I'm like, yeah, I remember that being like, what the hell? Because I think they called me for like roughing or something.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm like, I didn't even like check anybody. Like, what am I doing? How was I roughing? Like, I remember I had a little bit of a tantrum, and they captured that well.
Yeah, it was great. It was great, man. I loved it.
Thank you.
So, mate, I've already started recording, but this is like a Zildjian Chats thing. We've called it. So it's kind of come together with myself and the guy who looks after Zildjian out here, Justin Malseed. He's been with a company for years and years and years. A big legend of a bloke, and pretty much all it is me just interviewing my favorite drummers, and
that's rad.
Yeah, and just asking questions that I want to know because I love it. But mate, yeah, you're like, in terms of my favorite drummers and like most influential drummers on me personally, you're like right up there. I'd say in the top 2 or 3.
Oh damn! Wow.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
man, I've
That's
always
awesome.
I've loved your style. Loved your style, loved the way you play, loved the drum parts.
Cool. Thank you.
Like for me, right when I was getting into music and taking bands seriously and learning about, music and falling in love with music, that's right when the Used was just the thing, right? And
yeah, rad.
And like I love a lot of music and I love a lot of bands and whatnot, but for me, like there's a lot of great bands, but then within those bands, there's like more elite drummers that appeal to me personally, like my style of playing. And you're definitely, you're definitely one of those guys.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Like, so we'll kind of jump into drumming, because, you've lived it, you've done it, you've freaking lived the dream, mate. Like, I remember when the Used took off, like it was just, it was such a unique story. And it was, for me over here in Australia, it was the dream. That's the dream come true. Like, can you like talk us through the process, I guess, of, you're in a band with your mates, and then can you kind of talk us a little bit from what happened basically? Like how the hell did the Used happen like that?
It's interesting too, because I think I feel like the Australian version was very unique, because I remember the first time we went over there being told, none of us had been to Australia, of course. And so like our first trips over there, our managers and like, I think like label reps and stuff out there were like, hey, like, just so you know, like they're giving us some full heads up. They're like, you guys really haven't had like radio support or like whatever, like the kind of MTV type of, equivalent, or maybe it is MTV. I don't even remember at the time, early 2000s, but they were saying that we basically didn't really get much love from those like avenues.
Right.
But that we had organically like blown up in Australia, and that we were just kind of like the big, like almost underground band. And to us, that was like the most exciting thing you could tell us, because that was a big thing when we signed with Warner Brothers, was we were like, look, all of our favorite bands we've found on our own. It wasn't shit we stumbled over. Like it was like the opener of another band we love or whatever. It was just like the road dogs that were just out there working, And so one of the biggest points we made when we were negotiating, getting signed, which it seems silly as a Utah band, we were the first signed band in history of our state. And here we are negotiating,
Yeah.
But we were like telling them, we're like, we just want to get on the road. Like, we don't want to go to radio. We don't want to make music videos and all this shit, because we want a career. We want to connect with fans and build this, And they were like, oh, all right, less work for us. Like, of course, So they were totally down, which was awesome. But then the reality of it was we were touring nonstop. Like our first record cycle, I think the longest period we had of days at home was 10 days touring that entire first record. Like we were just like playing everywhere for no one, you know, like our very first tours were, we played for no one. It was like
Wow.
us and a couple bands, and
Yep.
we'd be in like little clubs or bars playing for nobody, you know, and we're like, oh shit, we kind of, I guess this is what we asked for, but we're
Yeah.
like, did we fuck up? You know,
Yeah.
maybe if people knew who we were and had heard our music, they'd come to our shows. Like, but sure enough, like we just kept on the grind, and it worked. Like, you know, we'd play a city and then play for 12 people. The next time we'd go back, it'd be 250 people. It was like, oh shit! And then we passed through on Warped Tour or Ozfest or something on like one of the small side stages, and then we'd come back through and suddenly we're playing to 1,000 people, and it was just like, oh my god, like, you know, and it just worked so organically. And so when we went over to Australia, we assumed we were starting back at the beginning of
Mhm.
like, all right, we're going to be playing for no one. You know, we've never been over there, and if you're telling us we don't have the support from these things, rad, let's build this, you know, and get
Mhm.
out there and play in front of the people and let them hear us that way. And we got there and it was crazy. Like the people there supporting us, the fans, you know, like it was the most beautiful thing. Like I loved it. And I think we actually played some kind of like television type of performance.
Yes, there was a TV network called Channel V, and they used to have this like touring kind of bus that would go around and they'd do gigs. But I remember when you guys came out, I think it might have been for your second album even. Um,
Okay. Okay.
it was the biggest thing, man. Like I came home from school, I was like, oh my god, the Used are going to be live on TV in Australia. You know,
Yeah.
like back then you didn't really have YouTube or you didn't really have any of that stuff. So for me, it was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, here they are. What are they wearing? What kind of drum kits are you going to be playing? Like all that kind of stuff.
Rad.
And I remember it was crazy, man. It was a crazy performance. It was sick.
I
It was a,
almost wonder now, did we even get there on our first record? I
well,
almost think our first time there might have been after In Love and Death came out.
it may have been because to me, I remember that was a massive thing. It was like this is the first time I'm seeing them. Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
But I do know that you guys came out here on the Taste of Chaos tour. So
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
not
That was
sure
our
if that
second time there.
okay because the band I play for, Behind Crimson Eyes, actually opened up the Taste of Chaos for,
Oh, sick.
for you guys. Yes, before I was in it, but I mean that's going back a while now. But I'm pretty sure they were like arenas, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the crazy thing is the first time we went out. Now it's a bit fuzzy, but I'm starting to think maybe that might have been when the second record came out.
Hmm.
And I think that was the whole thing is that our first record had kind of been this underground type of thing
Hmm.
and kind of blew up organically. And then now we were coming out and then there was this TV performance and I feel like that was our first time out. And I just remember being like shocked. I remember like jumping into a van at one point and it was like out of a movie, like people all around the van, like hitting the windows and taking photos through it. And it was just like, what? This is like rock star shit. Why is this happening to us? Like,
Uh,
you know, it was like such a trip. And then our second time there was the Taste of Chaos tour.
right,
And those were sadly, I'm heartbroken to say this, but those are the only two times I've been to Australia. And
right,
it sucks, you know,
yeah.
but man, those were like the best. I got engaged on that tour.
Oh no way.
My ex-wife and I, who's still like my best friend on earth, I love her to death.
Hmm.
Um, she worked with our band and sold our merchandise and stuff, and was my girlfriend at the time. And when we were there on tour for Taste of Chaos, when we were in Sydney, I proposed to her actually at like
No
the day of
way.
the show. There was like a
Sick.
crazy cemetery that's like on the water and with these crazy cliffs down to the ocean.
Yep.
I don't remember where, but it was in Sydney, and someone had told me about it, and I was like, hell yeah, that's where I'll do it. And like, so I took her there, like a runner, or somebody took us out to this cemetery, and we just roamed around this big rad cemetery, and I proposed her on the cliffs there. Like, it was rad. It was
That
super
is
cool.
that is cool.
So
What a good memory of Sydney, man. That's cool.
yeah, yeah. I mean, dude, I have nothing but love for Australia, and my memories there were absolutely incredible, and I've always raved to it. My girlfriend now that is my life partner and my best friend, like, it's fun because my ex-wife is actually, we're all like best friends, like
Hmm.
it's a dope situation. I'm very
Awesome.
fortunate to have great people in my life, that are
Hmm.
just good people, but, and love them to death. But I've told her so many stories about Australia and how I want to go back so bad, man, like
Yeah.
so bad. So eventually I'll get
Yeah.
back out there
I'm
one way or another.
I'm sure you'll be back down here. Mate, that's really cool to hear your perspective of that. Because yeah, for me as an Aussie kid that's in bands that was in listening to that type of music, I always used to listen to like the pop punk stuff. It was always Blink and Green Day and Unwritten Law and those types of bands.
Hmm.
And I never really used to listen to anything that was screaming. And then first time I
Yeah.
heard it, I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? But
That's rad.
Bert was I think the special sauce with Bert's vocals is he can scream like that, but he can sing so well as well, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so melodic and it's crazy heavy, then it's crazy clean and crazy like beautiful. So yeah, I feel like that you guys kind of changed things because all of a sudden just singing clean pop punk songs, which everyone was doing back then, was kind of not really up to scratch, really. When you got Bert and you guys
Yeah.
doing what you guys
Yeah.
were doing, everyone had to and then it all changed. And then, the Warped Tours and stuff all kind of had the screamo kind of wave come through.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. There was a lot of us all at once, and you would
mm,
think we all knew what each other were up to, but we didn't. Like, it was rad to find all these like-minded bands and artists, but it was interesting because Quinn and I always wrote all of our music,
mm-hmm,
and when our band before the Used, was very like, we were bad, we were one of those bands that like every song was a different type of music,
mm-hmm,
and it was like we love everything across the board from like funk and like just heavy, hardcore to punk rock and ska and reggae and just pop, especially.
mm-hmm,
We love all kinds of music, and so we would be like, oh, let's write like a pop song, let's write a funk song, let's write this song. And you'd listen to our songs, and it was this complete lack of identity where we were having a blast, and it was fun for our chops because we're playing all kinds of music, and he's with like a wah pedal 1 second and crazy shit, and then like heavy as hell and drop D or whatever the next, and like,
mm-hmm,
and for me, like I've really loved funk music a lot as far as like to play. I've always loved that because just the pocket and the grooves, and my first bands, our bass player was like a heavy like slap bass player, and so it just created these like grooves, and I really enjoyed that. But so when I started the Used, it was kind of like we wiped the slate clean, and at the same time we discovered Refused, and we heard New Noise, and it was just like, what the fuck is this, like, and that just changed our lives. Like, Quinn and I were just like, we literally had to like take a step back and be like, oh my god, like our writing can be so much more,
mm-hmm.
and something changed in both of us that day. And I remember, like, it was the first time that rather than trying to emulate the bands we loved, we literally just flipped it to let them inspire us, but not try to recreate it,
Yep.
and so it was one of those things where suddenly it was like, well, we do love all these kinds of music. How do we merge them into just whatever? And it was kind of, I guess the weird thing about it was that you'd think it would take more effort, but it took a lot less effort. We just played, we just wrote
Mm-hmm.
and jammed, and everything we played and wrote and jammed became our first record. And it was like, that's why every song is different, but yet feels the same.
Yeah.
And the very first song we wrote in this like evolution was maybe Memories, and that was like, we were like still, in we were trying to break out of emulating the bands we loved, but we were definitely nodding our hats to Refused on that song,
Yep.
and so, which is why, like, in later years, we even did we'd play part of New Noise in the bridge of that
Oh,
song,
sick.
because
Sick.
it was like, we got to throw it back. That's where this shit came from. We gotta pay tribute, and but I remember telling Bert when we linked up with Bert, because we had known him for years with other bands he was in. He had like a little ska punk band, and then he was in like this straight edge hardcore band. So we knew he could scream, we knew he could sing, and he had actually just gotten out of rehab. And so we knew he was somewhat sober, and we're like, all right, let's see what Bert's up to, you know?
Yeah.
And we connected with him. And then I remember having conversations with him, and we'd be like, look, it comes across contrived when people just scream because the music's heavy or sing because it's not. And we're like, just roll with the lyrics. And we're like, if there's a word or a sentence that deserves to be screamed because that's what you fucking mean, scream that line, you know? And we're like, don't worry about screaming just because it's open hi-hats and fucking, you know, riding on a crash and distortion and shit like that. Like, that doesn't mean you have to scream. Like, if the lyrics don't call for it, don't do it, you know? And so that kind of found a groove that I think ended up becoming unique, where I loved that, man. It's like screaming over clean tone guitars in a mellow, soft, like bridge of a song. And he's just screaming through the whole time and shit. And then this beautiful melodic chorus, even though the music's heavy, it was like, that's the shit that like comes naturally for us. And when Quinn and I write music together, that's our sound, you know? And
Yeah.
that was the thing. That was what worked for us, you know? And not worked in the way, in a commercial means. I don't mean by that, but I mean worked for us. Like it was like we found out who we were.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
it was like, oh, there I am. I found my place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
that was the
really
unique
special.
sound. Yeah. The unique sound that is the Used.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool to hear you explain it like that, because that's exactly what it is. You know? So it's,
yeah.
Now, taking it back even further, how did the whole John Feldman thing, like, because that was the dream. It was like kind of unknown band from a city in America that's not Los Angeles or New York, you know,
right?
Getting picked up by this amazing producer, and then it all happened. So what happened there? Did you send demos? How did that process unfold?
Yeah, so I was one of those kids that, like, I loved, you know, I'd stick around at a show for hours afterward and just hang out, hoping to meet the band, hoping to meet my heroes, you know what I mean? And it was like, or like if it's a festival or whatever, I'd be the sneaky bastard that found a way backstage somehow, you know? And I never wanted to be like a Punisher, you know? I wasn't trying to like get up in people's shit and anything like that. But I just loved connecting with these people and what I learned from those experiences, you know, I'd meet these guys that were just such good people and just made me that much bigger of a fan. Or maybe some people weren't so cool and you're like, I don't know, maybe not so rad, you know, and kind of makes you reassess. Like, I shouldn't just look up to everybody just because they write some good songs or, you know what I mean? Kind of puts things into perspective. But so anyway, Goldfinger was like one of those bands that felt like my band, in the way that, like, you know, when you're like the first one of your friends that finds a band and you're the one that like shows all of your friends that band, and you know what I mean? You're like so stoked. I had found Goldfinger like right when the CD came out, the first album, picked it up, the album, fucking loved it, showed all my friends. We all loved the band so much. And then like, but that was like a big thing for us, you know, we were all into punk. We were getting more and more into ska punk bands and things like that. And we just really enjoyed Goldfinger. But that was like the early days. And then fast forward a handful of years, and we were like making road trips out to California, taking demos to like Mojo Records, which was the label that Goldfinger was on, and Real Big Fish and stuff like that. And this guy, Patrick McDowell, was like the nicest A&R guy ever. He didn't just tell me to fuck off. He didn't tell me we sucked. He was super cool and encouraging, and be like, you know what? You guys have a good taste in writing melodies. You have this and this. Like, keep sending me more. Keep at it. And it was like just encouraging enough to like not just take the wind out of our sails. And this is like my earliest bands, you know. But he also wasn't like blowing smoke up our asses like, oh, you're great, but not quite that. You know, it was like humbling, where it was like, all right, we're not there yet, you know. And so one of the trips out to California, we had met them. Well, no, sorry, I'm jumbling the order. There was a festival in Salt Lake City that Goldfinger was playing, and we went to like the meet and greet and stuff, and like got to say hi to the fellas, shake hands, you know, get autographs and things like that. And then they were kind of just out hanging out because no one really knew who they were.
Mm.
And somehow we all ended up like sitting around, and like me and Darren and Charlie and John and like me and a couple of my friends were all sitting there and just chatting it up. And at the time, I wasn't with anybody that ended up being in the Used. Like I was with my current band at the time, but nobody that was in the Used. And here's a weird little, not to, it's just reminding me. I always thought this was strange, but so when they started their set, first time ever seeing Goldfinger, I was like right up against the barricade, front row. And my friends are surrounding me, and we're so stoked to finally see this band that we have been getting way into. The room's full of thousands of people because, again, it's a festival, and they were playing in like this indoor part of the festival, but there was like outdoor stages, and they were kind of on a smaller one, but it was still a good, 2,000 or 3,000 people in there. Mm-hmm. I'm up against it, and they came out and started with it's like the second song off the first record. Not King for a Day. It doesn't matter. But anyway, right. It doesn't matter. Now I'm going to get hung up on that. So that song starts with like guitar feedback and this like cool, like fast drum thing. And then like he's like screaming in the mic, and then the song kicks in. Mm-hmm. And as he did, he jumps and he spit and then like starts singing this song. And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden like on my arm is this big fucking thing of spit from Feldman. And I'm like, oh, like, and I'm like showing my friends, like, he fucking spit on me, and we're like laughing, like, I didn't care, but it was just like, God damn it. Like, of all these people, that lands on me. And I've talked to Feldman about this, because I was like, what if that would have landed on somebody else? Like, of all the people in that room that went on to have careers and know John Feldman, like, there was only one person in that room that happened to. And he only spit on one person in that room. It was like he tagged me, like he's like, it was you're the lucky winner, But it was just one of those things, like what if that would have landed on the guy next to me? He might have had a good music career that started working with Feldman. But
that's
anyway,
crazy.
But so I remember at that show they gave me this guy Patrick McDowell's email address and like phone number, or it was like the Mojo number. And just gave me his contact. And so that's the guy I started like sending demos and stuff to. And again, he was cool, but we just weren't there, and he was right about us, And then we had gotten to know Feldman more and more. And I got to know Feldman more and more, and would like meet him at every Goldfinger show. And we happened to be out in LA, just on another trip to Mojo to try to slip a demo, and Patrick was nice enough to have us like into his office. We just showed up at the label with a demo in hand, and they actually they let us up in, and we sat in his office and chatted with him. And he was going to a Goldfinger show that night in Pomona, California, and invited us to it. So we went there, and I'm just kind of creeping my way in more and more into the world,
Yeah.
But and at this point, Quinn had joined my band, and Jeff was the singer of that band. And then, but we still what we were doing just wasn't good, And so that's when it was like, we went home and kind of just like, well, there was one more show. Sorry, I'm jumping all around.
That's good.
There was a show they played in Salt Lake City, and only Quinn and I went to it, and a buddy of mine. And I got backstage. They hooked us up this time. And we were like at catering, just sitting with the guys in Goldfinger talking. And at this point, John had been producing bands. He had produced that band Show Off, which we saw in California, that show in Pomona. Show Off opened, and it was their CD release party. So we had started listening to that, and he had just produced Mest, and that was all he had done. And so we're like, all right, well, he's this like brand new producer, but so when we saw him at the Salt Lake City festival, he gave me his email address, and I was like, fuck yeah. But we were like talking about what to do about our band, because we had just lost our bass player, and our singer wasn't good. Sad to say, he knew it. It was Jeff. He knew he wasn't a good singer. And so we go home and we're like, sorry, and cut me off anytime because this is a long story.
Oh, it's
But
good. This is awesome.
um, but we go home and I'll never forget it. It was like serendipitous. Like Jeff was at work. Quinn and I were riding like lowrider bikes around like his little hometown, this little like podunk town. And we're riding bikes and we end up at this park and we're just chilling, like talking about the band and what the fuck we should do. And we're like, all right, we just need to address the weak links. This isn't working with Jeff, but he's our best friend, you know, like, and we're like, maybe we could get him to play bass and we just get a new singer, you know? And we were like talking about that, like, how do we tell him that without just like being a knife in the back, you know? This is our friend and we cared about him. And it was just like, and when we first met Jeff, he had played bass a little bit. Like if he played music, it was bass, you know, he wasn't much of a musician and had dabbled with bass. And so we just decided like, all right, fuck it. We're going to have to tell him, we'll figure this out. And so meanwhile, this dates the story, but Jeff pages me and I'm like, oh, he just paged me from work. Like, and so we ride our bikes back to Quinn's mom's house and I call Jeff and I shit you not. He's like, hey, so I was just thinking about it. And he's like, what if we get a singer and I just play bass? And we're like, oh shit. like, dude, it almost made me tear up. I was so happy. I was like, we were literally just talking about that. And so I was so stoked. And so like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then it was kind of shady because Jeff's mom was about to file for bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And so before she did, she went to this like local music store and bought him a bass and an amp and shit.
Oh, wow.
And then filed bankruptcy like the next day. So he got like brand new gear and all of us were just playing shit gear, but he like had some rad brand new stuff. And then he just practiced his ass off and learned how to play bass. And meanwhile, within a few days of all of this, Quinn and I wrote Maybe Memories. And literally Jeff writing his bass lines to that was his first time ever like properly writing bass to like a new song we wrote, you know?
Yeah,
like,
wow.
And it was, so our first album was like Jeff's bass lessons, you know, learning how to play. And that was where the groove kind of became like Quinn and I writing everything, you know, and Jeff would be there, but he's just kind of trying to figure things out. So it's like, dude, you do you, we're going to just write, you know? And then when we could get Bert to show up, Bert would write. But that was the hard part, is getting that guy to show up,
right?
You know? And anyway, so I've strayed from the point massively. But so for a minute there, once I started the Used, it was like, all right, we keep playing these useless fucking shows around Utah to the same friends and family and whatever. It's not doing us any good. Let's just pump the brakes on everything and focus on riding. Like, let's not worry about playing at the local skate park anymore like we are. Like, the venues out here were shit and wouldn't support music like ours. Like, if you played hip-hop, punk, hardcore, rock, anything like that, the local venues wouldn't allow you. It was a very conservative town. They only wanted very conservative music. So we'd all have to rent out, like, a veterans hall or a skate park and things like that to play a show. And it was a lot of work, you know, to, like, be this very DIY scene. And that's where our shows would be mixed. It would be a hip hop crew and a hardcore band and a funk band, and a metal band. And it was so mixed and rad. But anyway, so we just focused on writing. I had recorded, like, I bought this little 8-track recorder. I recorded, like 3 of our songs and it was, Maybe Memories, one called Zero Mechanism that was actually, I think, the only song that we wrote that didn't end up on our record. And then I think Box Full of Sharp Objects wasn't up yet. But anyway, so we had done, or it was Say Days Ago. And then we had written those songs and I emailed them to John Feldman and I didn't even tell the guys I was going to do it. I just like bounced them down. I had this little cheap ass computer I managed to get. I was working this crappy day job just to afford rent and that. I emailed him to John Feldman and he hit me back like the next day and was like, these are cool. Send more. And I was like, oh my God. And so like, I told the guys, I'm like, guys, I sent these to Feldman, like, you know, and everybody's like super stoked. So we go back to work. We're writing more songs. We wrote like 2 more. I send them over to him, and it's literally like a copy and paste reply. Like, these are cool. Send more. And that kind of took the wind out of our sails. Where we're like, oh, all right. So he just fucking says this to everybody, you know. And we were like,
Right.
all right, like let's not even worry about this. Let's just focus and write, you know. And then we wrote like 4 more songs. And among those songs, one of them was Box Full of Sharp Objects.
Mm-hmm.
And this, a good amount of time had gone by. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to send these new songs to Feldman too. And so I sent them to him. And then the next morning, and again, I didn't even tell my bandmates, like, and the next morning, my little brother, like I grew up in like a Mormon family. I am agnostic. I don't subscribe to any religion or anything. I don't care. But I grew up in a very conservative Mormon family, and my little brother was going on what they call like a Mormon mission, where he goes out and, you know, solicits for their religion for a couple years. And he was leaving for this Mormon mission the next morning. So me and my whole family are at the Salt Lake City, Utah airport at like 6 a.m. to send my brother off on this mission. And while we're sitting there, I'm tired as hell. At this point, I've got a cell phone, and I had dropped my number in there on the email to Feldman. And my phone rings in the airport. And I don't recognize the number. I'm like, who the fuck would be calling me at 6 a.m.? And I answer, and it's John Feldman. And he's like, hey, it's Feldman. I'm like, oh, hey. Like, he's like, dude, I listen to your songs. I love them. I'm like, thanks, man. And he's like, I'm in Norway right now. We're playing the festival with Deftones. And we're like, and he's like telling me all this shit. And my mind is fucking blown. And he's like, but as soon as I get back from Europe, he's like, I want to bring you guys out to LA and produce a demo for you guys. And he's like, and I want to bring you on tour with Goldfinger. And dude, I'm like, tears running down my face, like trying to sound cool. And like, you know, I'm like, that'd be amazing. Okay. Like, yeah. All right, that'd be great. And he's like, yeah, dude, I'll call you up when I get home from Europe. I just had to call you and tell you I love the song. I'm like, oh my God. And I fucking like called Quinn's house, woke him up because Bert was staying there with him. Woke those guys up. We're all crying and screaming. And it was like we won the lottery, you know what I mean? And at the time, like Feldman hadn't done shit like that. Like he hadn't produced shit, you know, like, but we were just so stoked because this was like, someone gave a shit about what we were doing, you know? And then I called Jeff. He was already at work. We were freaking out. And dude, it was insane. And then yeah, fast forward and next, you know, we're in LA making a demo, and fuck, that's another chapter. I've talked my ass off, but
wow.
But, yeah,
so so you went there and made a demo. Was his studio in his house, or was it in an actual studio? Or?
No, man. Like, studio is a overstatement, big time.
Right.
Like, I expected to get there and like have this fucking like LA rock star, like this fucking studio and like big drum live room, and like I just expected some shit because I'm this small town Utah kid that's never been anywhere, and you know, and like we fly to LA and we get there and he's got this very, very small house, and it's like, oh, okay, and then like we go in and there's one bedroom that's small. It's smaller than the room I'm in, and this is not a large room. But it's just a standard bedroom, you know? And that bedroom, oh, there you go. That's half the room right there.
I found that on your Insta.
Hell yeah.
Like, so is this recording the demo?
Yeah. That might even been making the record, but which was exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like same setup, same room, everything. He had his little console desk right there. No, he didn't have any faders. He had nothing. He had a little thing of pre's and just a mouse and keyboard and screen. And I was just like, where's all the faders and shit? Where's like the studio looking shit? This is just an iMac. Like, what the fuck? Where's the recording studio? You know? And then he had a little tiny closet right there, and he had an amp mic'd up in that closet, and then like 2 amp heads outside of the closet, and that was it, dude. The whole room, like like everything. And then to get like a room mic sound, because we didn't have a room mic sound, it was this very small room with like 8-foot ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
Right down the hall was a bathroom, and we put an SM57 mic in the shower
Sick.
and then compressed the hell out of it. So it got this crazy, like distant, like it created a sense of space. And then like, I remember going out there, I had like worked my ass off and bought a Thomas Star Classic that I've been paying on for years.
Mm.
And so it was like, it was a good kit, you know?
Mm.
And I was like, yo, like, can I bring my drums out? How am I going to get out there? And he's like, oh, I've got a Pearl out here that we'll use. I'm like fucking, really? Like, this is a great kit, man. Like,
Yeah.
and he's like, no, trust me. Like, if you don't like the sounds, we'll borrow drums, we'll rent drums, whatever. He's like, but I've got good tones out of this.
Mm.
And so I just took that leap of faith and was like, all right. And then that's how I know that photo actually was making the record. Because when we made the album, I wanted one more tom because I was playing with 2 floor toms at the time.
Right.
So that red tom that you see there, that's from my Star Classic. So I had his. There's a second floor tom that you can't see that was the Pearl, but so that way I was playing like a 6-piece setup, which I never played with like the second rack tom after that. I put my ride there, but recording the record, I had the 2 racks and the 2 floors, and but yeah, that red one's from my kit, and that Pearl, like, it didn't sound good in the room, but he had these like drum doctor like drum like replacement things that he'd 50-50 with the drums.
Oh yeah.
So there was this dope snare sound, there was some good like a dope kick, and then he'd like 50-50 those, and they'd match the sound wave exactly with mine. So like what was lacking in tones could be made up for and really cut through in the mix. So the drum tones on that record ended up being awesome, but compared to what I was hearing and playing, the tones weren't that rad. Like, you know, we'd get them pretty dialed, but a lot of people ask me about those drum tones, and I'm like, man, those are half and half, like just like sound samples and my kit. You know?
And that was probably back in the day when that stuff just kind of started, really, like Pro Tools and like being able to mix samples with real drums.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was really weary about it at first because I didn't like the idea of anything feeling or sounding programmed at all.
Yeah.
Because I was like, yo, I'm working my ass off to like play these parts, and I've put a lot of work and creativity into writing these parts, and I practiced to clicks, and like, you know, like I wanted my shit to be on, and I wanted to put the best fucking drums down that I could and do what's best for the song. Because to me, it was never about the drummer, it's about the song, you know. It's never about the guitarist, it's never about it's the collective, you know. And I've always tried to write parts like that where it could be interesting but not make it all about like, oh, me, like look at what I can do. I'm not a fan of that. And so yeah, like, but I was really worried that it was going to sound like samples, or it was going to sound automated or programmed and shit like that. And he did a good job. And I sat there like literally beside him while we mixed the record, and I would nitpick things like, no, I'm playing on the rim of the tom right there. Like, you need to hear that. And like, I hit a splash right here. That needs to come through. Like, that little bell accent I did, like, where is it? Turn that up. Like just, you know, and I would like, I nitpicked the fuck out of it. And like, dude, both of our records, I was right there for mixing, like nitpicking the hell out of it so that everything sounded like what I played and came across like my vision, you know, and I was really stoked on it, but it was a definite collaboration. And it was great because, I mean, John's done a great job and had a great career since then. You know, I think that was a starting point for both of us. And I mean, all of us. There was an interesting story. I could share stories all day, but it was intense because so while we were out there recording the demo, he introduces us to these 2 guys, John Reese and Paul Gomez, who were managers and wanted to they just came over to hear our band. They knew nothing about it, and they loved it instantly. Called the next day and wanted to manage us. He sent our songs, the rough mixes, over to a lawyer friend of his who had worked for like the Red Hot Chili Peppers their entire career. He worked for Tool. He worked for like so many like big bands. That guy loved it and wanted to represent us. And we're like, oh my God, like did we just get management and like a lawyer? Like, what is happening? And then all of a sudden, it just like they started sending our demo out, and it was this like fucking insane whirlwind of labels trying to sign us. And
Wow.
it was just mind blowing. And so at a point, we were flying to New York and doing showcases, flying to LA doing showcases. We did a very short, like 4-show run with Goldfinger, opening for them. And then it came down to Warner Brothers and Island Def Jam were rad. And Warner Brothers were the ones that just were like, again, like I was saying, we wanted to do things our way. We wanted to just tour. We didn't want to be some crammed down everybody's throat radio band and whatever. Like, and we just, it was really important to everything be grassroots and on our terms. We weren't interested in money. We all came from poor families, so we never had money. We didn't give a fuck, you know, like, and so there was never a bidding war or nothing like that. It was great because we just had complete freedom. But the problem that all of a sudden arose was they didn't want us to work with John Feldman because like he was working a lot with Maverick Records at the time. And the reason we didn't sign with Maverick is because he had just released the second Mest album, and they wanted to see how that would go first because they're like, look, this is your third album you produced and none of them have like sold or done anything. And we're not going to sign another band you're producing until something does something. And so they didn't even like entertain signing us just because Feldman hadn't done anything that was selling at all.
Right.
And so Warner was hesitant for us to use him and wanted us to use somebody else. And so I'll never forget, I had a phone call with Feldman. He was real upset because I think they were like willing to maybe use him, but they were just going to hella like underpay him and under like, you know, it just wasn't a respectful situation happening. And it was either they weren't going to use him or just not being treated well. But I remember talking to him, and then a conference call of both managers and our lawyer called me because I was like the business guy of the band, and I started the band. I was doing all that stuff. And they called me, and they're like, look, you got to talk to the president of the label, and you need to tell him what you guys want. And they don't. He told us they don't want to hear it from us. They want to hear it from the band. And I'm like, dude, like to talk to any of these people was still intimidating at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all of these phone calls were making me so nervous. And I was getting like phone calls from A&R guys and label owners. And Matt Pinfield calls me one day when I was like this huge 120 Minutes fan. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like everything was just crazy. And like, and then so I have to call the president of the label, Tom Wally, like head of Warner Brothers Records. And so I'm talking to him and I'm like, hey, so we're all good. Like we're all happy with the deal, but we need to know John Feldman's going to be taken care of or else we can't do this. And he was like, all right, you got it. Like you got my word. And I was like, and I don't know where I got the balls to say this, but I was like, that's great, but I need to hear that from Feldman. And I was like, so you can tell me whatever you want, but it's you and Feldman that need to have the conversation. And when I hear from him that he feels like he's going to be good, then we're good and we've got a deal. And he's like, all right, I'll talk to you in 15 minutes. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. And like the call ends and I'm like, fuck, what did I do? What did I do? You know, like, I didn't know. I felt like I was literally like, just put everything on red and was gambling with this. And then like, dude, I swear not 5 minutes went by. And Feldman called me like in tears. And he's just like, I don't know what you said, but we're good. And he's like, Tom Wally just called me and we're good, man. We're good. I'm like, yeah. And so like, then I tell everybody in the band, I tell our managers, I call Tom Wally back and I'm like, yo, sounds like we're good to go. And like, we signed with Warner Brothers. But it was crazy because like, he almost even didn't work with us, you know, like,
wow.
So I'll never forget that. It was intense, man. It was really intense, but it was important. Like we were trying to build something special and there were only a few people that believed in what we were doing at first. And so it was important to keep that family together, you know?
100%. I think it's really cool that you're the guy, like the business guy and the one pushing behind the scenes, because every band has one. And you don't know who it is when you're not, you know, you don't know who it is. So it's cool to hear that that's what you do, because that's like a whole nother thing, you know, like there's been a drummer, but then there's making things happen, you know, and being
Yeah.
kind of savvy and whatnot. So that's cool that you're the one pushing a lot
Well,
of
it's
that.
one of those things too. It's like the beats and everything where it's like in the end it's about the band, you know, not the individuals, you know, and it's like I wasn't, other than like telling these stories, I wasn't concerned about people knowing like my role in the band.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
like in the past 15 years since I've been out of the band or more, it's like I've told these stories a lot, and so that's become more and more known. But it was never like at the time. It was like, nah, man, this is all about all of us. Like, it doesn't matter who's writing what and who's it. It's the four of us, and that's everybody that's credit. Our business, everything was 25% equal. Like, we were just like, it was all about the
good.
band. You know,
Yeah.
it was a real brotherhood. You know,
That's that's cool to hear, man. Now, you've obviously, I mean, you've done a lot since then too. So, mate, we haven't even touched on Rancid yet, which is so
dude,
crazy.
I'm a talker too.
No, I love these stories. No, I love these, man. I've watched some of your interviews and stuff, and like a good talker is so important, man, because some people don't talk much, and it's good. Like you're busting out stories that people mightn't have heard, and different pieces and parts of stories that you haven't spoken about before. That's cool, man. So on your you know, obviously you departed with the Used, and then I saw on your Instagram, it was quite recently, I actually sent it to Justin from Zildjian, and I said, have a look at this, how sick's this? And it was this photo here, right? And it was
red.
Yeah, it was the Weinbergs, and you know, I obviously read the caption, and that's what was cool, man. Like what you were saying about Max and how he kind of went out of his way to mentor you when you weren't playing with anybody. Can you talk on that? Like, that's just insane.
Absolutely. You know what? Let me just, for good measure, I'm going to plug in my phone. Just
so it doesn't go flat.
We don't run into any problems. Let's see. Oh, what is it doing? Okay.
Oh, there we go. I gotcha.
Okay, cool. Let me see if that will stay. Yeah.
I know the issue. I know the issue, mate. You got the thing
there.
You got to balance
it. Yeah, like once you're plugged in, like you can balance it on shit. There we go.
I know that drama.
To make it sideways for you,
mate. That's good.
How's that?
Do it. Yeah, we're good. That's
all
great.
right. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the Max story, is that what you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Max story, 100%.
So, yeah, I mean, so there's a little backstory to it, and I'll try to make it little because, again, this is all a book awaiting to be written. But so in the end, like, you know, when we started the band, it was 3 sober guys and Bert fresh out of rehab, you know. In time, you know, everything kind of got caught up, and it became like 3 partiers and me. I was like the only sober guy. And then unbeknownst to me, that was creating more and more of a wall between us, where I was the guy, as you're hearing, like I was working on all the business. I was like the worker guy, and everybody's just kind of getting caught up in partying and stuff like that. I've always been like a to each their own kind of guy, but it was important to me to let it be known and try to break stereotypes a little bit, because when we were starting out, hearing people hearing we were from Utah, they assumed we were all like Mormons and we had 10 wives and all this bullshit, like, you know, stereotypes about Utah. And then all of a sudden, you know, people were hearing that Bert was kind of this wild partier and stuff. So then suddenly it was that we were this heavy partying band. And it's like, fuck, and can I just like be me and not be lumped in with some other shit? And like, I've been sober and drug free my entire life. I'm 45 years old and I've never tasted alcohol. I've never dabbled in recreational drugs ever, you know? But I'm also the kind of person like, that doesn't make me fucking better than anybody. It's not a right or wrong thing. When I was 12 years old, my buddy was dropping acid and shit. And I saw what it was doing to him, and it was a huge turnoff. And then some of my friends were really burning out when we were like 16, right when I was getting into music. And I was like diehard skateboarder. And they were just like, you know, I was watching the way they were getting caught up in drugs and how it's taken over the passion for skating. And so then I found music and started playing with musicians because all my skater friends would be out partying instead of skating, and so on and so forth. So I just was like, there was a lot of like crazy abuse and shitty drama at home that I was dealing with when I'd go home. Like I'd be running from cops and shit, like as a skater trying to just skate. And then I'd go home and have to call the cops because my stepdad would be beating up my mom, and it was just like all this shit going on that the idea of like fucking with drugs or alcohol just seemed like something that make things a lot harder and messier. And I just had no interest. So it was not like a right or wrong thing. It was just, it's not for me, and it never has been like, and so that little backstory, fast forward, and as we're like blowing up and having this career, obviously all of this stuff is everywhere and ready available, but it was just never a temptation for me at all. And I was having a hard time, like trying to kind of babysit Bert at times in the way that, he always letting him do what he wanted to do, but it was getting to a point where like we were canceling shows because he'd be too sick from partying the night before, and ate shrooms at 5 a.m. and sick all day. And so I'm taking him like tea and medicine and like things for his stomach to just try to get him better so we didn't have to cancel another show. And so I was just like babysitting in that way, like trying to be a caretaker. And it was like, yo, do what you want, have fun, don't fuck up our career, and so eventually, like, that's when, like, you see in our albums and stuff or photos, I'd wear shirts that said, like, fuck drugs or, like, drug-free or whatever, because it was important to me to represent the middle ground, I guess, because we'd get lumped in with either, like, radical religious people and Mormonism and things like that from our hometown, or with, like, the straight edge scene that was huge in Utah. But anyway, we were just getting lumped in with all these things where it was like either like we were like hardcore partiers, we were straight edgers, or we were Mormons, and it's like, no, I'm not any of these things, and so I never wanted to claim straight edge because where I'm from, that was kind of a bad thing. They were too radical and extreme and being violent and shit that I don't support. So anyway, so I would wear these shirts and stuff just trying to break stereotypes of like letting it be known like, you don't have to do this shit. You can be drug free and still have a career in this industry and stuff. And so that was never about like, I'm better than anybody else. Like you need to do this or whatever. But then we got to a point where we could have 2 tour buses. And rather than do like a band bus and a crew bus, like a lot of people do, we decided to have a sober bus and a party bus. Cause then it's like, yeah, then everyone's comfortable. Do what you want. You know what I mean? But the problem was that I ended up being the only band member on the sober bus.
Right.
And so then it just kind of created this divide. And then fast forward just a little bit. And when we were making our 3rd record, Quinn called me up and kicked me out and said that I was too different and that they wanted somebody that would party with them. And I was fucking heartbroken. And I was just like trying to talk him out of it. And he was not in the best place at the time. A lot of his shit stemmed from his own things going on and things with family, things with him and Bert, a lot of things. And I was kind of what it got projected toward. So in the end, it really had nothing to do with me. And these are things him and I have had long talks about since, because he's my best friend and I love the guy to death now, but it was really rough, man. He fired me and for being sober. And it was really hard. And so Max Weinberg had come out to one of our shows when Jay was like 13 or something like that, and came and checked us out. We had played the Conan O'Brien show. Jay was a fan, and Max came out to the show, and we met. He was such a good dude, and we became friends over the years. He'd give me great tips. That's where I learned to like start icing my wrists after shows, and I do that every single show religiously, like. But when he heard the news that I got fired from the band, he started calling me like several times a week and just giving me pep talks. And I'll never forget the craziest shit he said was that when Bruce had broke up the E Street Band in like, I think 87, he said that Ringo Starr would call him all the time and give him pep talks. And so he felt like he wanted to kind of return the favor to another drummer, you know? And it was just like, my mind was exploding. I was like, Ringo Starr to Max Weinberg to me?
Sick.
Like, who the fuck am I? You know, it was just like, what? Like, but man, I was so like heartbroken and done with the music industry. I had zero interest in playing music anymore and being in a band because I was like, you know what? Like, I was honest in all of my business. I was faithful to my wife. I was faithful to my friends. I was, you know, fought for integrity in our records and wrote every note of music with Quinn. And like, you know, it was just like, I started a band with my brothers, you know, and if this is what that gets you, then I don't want to fucking do this, you know? And Max would call me and just, he'd be the guy to pep talk me and be like, telling me like, you're a great drummer and you should keep it up. And he'd give me legal advice. He would give me like everything. And then one of the best calls and the best days that just was the game changer for me was me and my wife at the time, Spike, my best friend, were driving to Salt Lake City to see Rancid. And it was like a 40-minute drive. And I was on the phone with Max the whole way there. And I got there and getting off the phone with Max Weinberg, my mind's just blown once again that I'm getting pep talks from a guy of this caliber and this, like, he was just an incredible human being. Never mind his career. He's just an incredible human being. He went to law school. He's so smart, like such a good dude. So then I walk in and I'm on Rancid's guest list because we became friends a few years earlier. They're one of my favorite bands. And like, they're like, yo, like, stick around after the show. We want to hear about what happened. And so they're giving me like shout outs on stage in my hometown, and it was rad. And, and so like afterward, we're hanging on the bus, me and the band, all the crew. I'm sharing all these stories. And they're all like pep talking me like, yo, just start a new band, start a band with your friends. I'm like, I already did that. And look what it got me, you know? And then I remembered like when I went to leave, Tim gave me his like contacts and he's like, yo, keep in touch. Like maybe you can produce some bands for Hellcat, like something. I got a good feeling about you. Just don't give up, you know? And I was like, all right. And then I took a weekend trip with my friends and then like came back that weekend and just, or that Monday and started playing drums like crazy every day. I hadn't played in 2 months or whatever it had been. I think almost 2 months exactly that I had been kicked out of the band. And I was like, you know what? They're right. Like, I need to play. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what direction to go. I just need to have a relationship with my drums again, you know? And so I started playing that Monday. I made this like playlist on my iPod of like everything from jazz songs to pop songs and everything, punk rock and hardcore. Started playing every day. And that Friday, Tim hit me up and told me to call him. And I was like, oh, what the hell? And I called him up, and then he's like, hey, like, and he sounds all somber. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, Brett, he's like, we have this like 3-week tour in the UK that in 5 days and all sold out shows. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and Brett Reed just quit Rancid. And I was just heartbroken, man. Like, I thought he was telling me they were done. And my heart just fell out of my stomach. I'm like, fuck. Like, and he's like, so we're just wondering, will you do the tour? And I was just like, again, dude, just tears down my face. It was insane.
What?
And I was like, hell yeah, you know? And he was stoked as hell. Lars called me, gave me 25 songs to learn in 3 days. I had to ship my drums out to England the next day. Like, and man, just a whirlwind started there. Like, it was insane.
Wow. So that was only like a couple of months after the Used.
Yeah. It
wow.
ended up being, I think, 3 months to the day. I was kicked out August 1st, 2006. And November 1st, 2006, I joined Rancid.
And Rancid were obviously, like, for you growing up, they were obviously like one of your favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
That like, is they were, so like, sick.
They were one of my top punk rock bands. And that was the wild thing, man. Like, I learned these 25 songs in just a couple days, flew out to LA. All of our gear was already on its way to England, which was insane because we hadn't jammed a note, nothing. And then, like, we get to this little rehearsal spot. Every one of us are on just loaner gear, you know? and they just ambushed me, man. Like I was in there and had warmed up, and they walked in the door and were like, "Yo!" and they all give me hugs, and they put their guitars on, and I'm not exaggerating. Within a minute of them walking in the door, we were playing music, and Lars is just like, "Let's play Roots Radical," and he starts the song. I'm like, "Oh shit, we're going!" Like, and so I play the song, and then that we finish, and they're stoked and like laughing, and I'm just like, "All right, that seems good." Like everybody's happy, like okay, and they're like, "Okay, let's try a fast one. Let's try It's Quite All Right." I'm like, "Okay," and there was always like kind of some gaps in that song on the record, you know, like I've listened to these songs so many times, and they were just like, it's a fun, fast punker, you know, and I know the vocal, I know what everybody's doing, and I could just hear some spots where there could be a little flex, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just threw in a few little bit longer fills, like my style, you know, and just like whatever, where there were gaps. And we finished the song, and they were just laughing their asses off and so stoked. And they're like, "Fuck yeah, like that's what that's supposed to sound like," and you know, and I'm feeling hella good, but I'm still so nervous. And then they're like, "Let's take a break," and I'm like, "Okay, we played 2 songs, but okay," you know. And so we go outside. They're all talking and stuff, and I'm sitting at this like picnic table right there, and then they just came and sat all around me, and they're like, "All right, we want you to be a permanent member of Rancid." And they're like, "You in?" I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like, you know, I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm in." They're like, "Fuck yeah, let's go jam." And you know, the rest is history. I joined the band that day. It was insane. After 2 songs.
2 songs. Wow, man. That must have been.
And they always tell me like, they always just say that it wasn't an audition. You know, they're always like, that was the only choice. Like that was it. Like we were all in, and which is insane. But I mean, that's a big leap of faith.
They'd obviously seen you play before and knew you already, so I knew you were a good dude and you could shred, and they obviously loved the way you play. But man, what a feeling that must have been to just, that's like a whole different thing. Like the Used was like you built it from zero to what it was, and then after that you've gone straight into legendary status, like, which is a whole nother trip.
Yeah, insane. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, if you asked me as a teenager, like, or when I was first playing drums, or, you know, really chasing after the dream, if you asked me like, all right, would you rather be in one of your favorite bands, you know, like, but playing like their songs mostly, or would you rather be in your own band that you started and have that band be successful? And it's like, that's a hard choice. You know, that'd be a hard choice for a lot of people. So I think I've been fortunate, to say the least, in the way that I've lived both sides of that coin, you know. And I mean, there's something to be said about, I took a lot of pride, and I absolutely love the Used and always will, because that was my baby. You know, I named the band, I started the band, I dealt with everything, and I wrote that music, and you know, it's like that will always be my baby, you know. But I certainly love what I do, and the band I'm in, you know. It's always been one of my favorites. But I think the creative outlet, you know, the Used and my own band was certainly my creative outlet. Where Rancid, I know what these songs need and what to play, and I don't want to fuck that up. And again, it's not about me or the drums. It's about the song, and I know what these songs need, and that's going to be a lot more basic than what I would have written with the Used, because that was a little bit more intricate. And so it's interesting, because I haven't, you know, for 15, 16 years, it's like I'm proud of this band. My drums are like, yeah, they do the part. Yeah, like they're cool. You know, like I'm not writing anything. I'm like, you know, where like Blue and Yellow is still one of my favorite things I've ever written. You know, like that's something I'm really proud of, that beat. And this, I'm just kind of playing like what the song needs, and it's just a test to that approach, I guess, of writing what the song needs, not what makes you look good. And so I practice that, you know. Yeah,
that's so interesting to hear you say that as well. That's so cool, man. Do you ever feel like just throwing in like some of your your kind of style more so into that stuff? Like, are there ever moments where it kind of works, or
That's the thing. It's so the way we write with Rancid is so different. Like when Quinn and I wrote, it was a jam session with his guitar, his amp, some pedals. I'm behind my kit, and there's just like, let's explore the space. What's the vibe? You know what I mean? And it's like pulling colors out of the air, if that makes sense. Kind of arty way to put it. But like, and when we do stuff with Rancid, we write everything acoustically. And we're like sitting in a circle.
Cool.
And it's like, Tim, you like typically will like throw down, like show us a part he's written. And it's like a 3-4 chord structure. The rhythm's there. It's very just classic Rancid sounding. And so Lars starts playing along and doing like the chords with it. And Matt starts doing some incredible bass line.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, it's already there. It's written, and like when they play that, you only have so much space to work with. It's like, all right, the rhythm is literally already created. And the hard part I run into is there's usually not a vocal yet. And to me, a vocal is a very important part of the song. I think it's what makes the song. We're not composing instrumentals here, and so in the end, you don't want to fuck up the vocal. And so with having the vocal part not written yet, I never know what they're going to do and who's even going to sing that song, what the cadence will be like, anything. So because of that, I don't want to fuck it up and do some fills and rhythm that are going to fuck up what they could write. And suddenly they're having to write the vocal around the drums, And so because of that, I keep it super chill. I just keep the beat that flows, make sure there's high energy there, regardless of the tempo, and just fucking throw it down hard. And then, but when we're writing, I'm just tapping on my lap with my hands.
Yeah.
And then we'll get something and we'll work on it for just a little bit. Our producer will be like, yeah, let's lay it down. And then I'll sit behind my drums for the first time. We record everything live. Yeah. And so we're sitting there in a circle, but now the amps are on for the first time. And then I'll play the song with or without a click. It just kind of depends on the song, what the vibe is. And usually I don't know that we ever play anything more than 3 times. And there's never, ever a punch in. Yeah. And so everything I've ever done, usually the first take is the first time I've ever played that song on drums.
What?
And that ends up like, we'll play it. And if Brett Gurwitz likes the energy and likes the performance, he's like, cool, let's move on. I'm like, fuck, there's an album track and I played it 1 time ever on drums. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
So, like knowing that approach, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I don't know what parameters I have to work within because I don't know what the vocals are doing. I don't know what we're hearing this as an acoustic jam. And so it's like, my job is to just give this a fucking solid backbone that's full of energy and leave room for everybody to paint over top of it. And so the approach is very different where it's less songwriter drumming and more like doing what the song needs, and
gotcha.
And it's very, very different. I as not to sound pretentious, but as an artist, like I love songwriter drumming where like I'm involved in depth and riffing back and forth and trying crazy shit and, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of thing. So I definitely miss and love that kind of writing. But again, not to be mistaken for a lack of gratitude for what I get to do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I love what I get to do. Like I love it. I love the energy and everything about it. But
how long
did I want the best of both worlds,
Yeah. How long did it take you to get used to being in a band with like legends like that? Because I'd imagine, obviously, at the start, it's kind of like, oh my god, I'm playing for Rancid. I can't believe it. Yeah. Like, how did it take a while to kind of get comfortable and be like, did that take a minute to kind of get used to being in a band with legends?
Yes and no. That's a great question. It was one of those things where like it was a pinch me moment. And dude, I'm like 16 years in and it's still a pinch me moment. You know what I mean? Because like I had posters of these guys in my studio, like, and on my walls growing up and like, and so that part of it is like a what the fuck? But then like I knew like what we all know, like a persona to say the least, like of what we all interpret Rancid to be. You know, we each, you know, the way we view these bands we love makes it our own, and so we have this kind of like preconception of what that is, who they are, all this stuff. You know, it's like Feldman in the House. Like you're like, whoa, this isn't what it doesn't fit what I pictured. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but like. But with these guys, it's like the version and the band that I loved and the band I'm in feel like two different bands. You know what I mean? And I think in a good way where it allows me to still be objective and focus on my job and treat this like, you know, like not be weird and just like, it's like, no, these guys are my equals. We're all equal in the end. Like it doesn't matter if you work at a fucking like hardware store or McDonald's or you're a rock star. We're all just people, you know? And so it levels the playing field and it lets me just do my thing without my head getting in the way. But on the other side, then when, you know, you have that realization and you see like a photo or you see that logo and you see like this shit that to me is like legendary, like they are legends, you know, and I don't lump myself in with that. They were legends when I joined this band. And so to me, that's when I feel like I'm among these legends because it's like, wow, like they had already been so established and so fucking like, you know, just that legend status before I came along that I just am here to make sure that doesn't get fucked up and to give it some extra life and energy. You know, I'm younger than the guys and I want to bring, I'm a highly energetic person, as you can tell by how much I fucking talk.
That's the best.
But just want to bring that energy all the time. You know what I mean? And so I think it's one of those things. Like I think I don't really think about it on a day to day because they're just my friends I'm in a band with, and you know, some days you're stoked to talk to them, other days you know avoid their phone call. Like it's like anybody, you know what I mean? Like, and then other times it's just like, holy shit, that's fucking radio, you know.
What was it like?
Radio.
It's mental. And what was it like? Say when you first jam with them, like you know when you jam with a new band or different musicians, you can feel like the way they play it. You can feel it sometimes, or like you'll know things about a certain group. It's not until you actually play with them that you're like, you know, like, did you feel things like, even with Matt Freeman with his bass lines, like, were you like copping that bass coming at you and like, holy shit, like,
dude, talk about a drummer dream come true.
Yeah.
Like, the rad thing about, I think what works so well with these guys, because Brett Reed he wasn't like necessarily in love with his craft, at least hadn't been for a while. And by the way, Brett's actually a dear friend of mine, and we still keep in touch, and I have nothing but love and respect for that guy. Like he to me will always be the drummer of Rancid, you know, even though I've technically been in the band longer than he was, but to me, he's still the drummer of Rancid, you know? But there was just like, I had seen them play so many times, and there was just like, you know, him and I play with a different style, a different, you know, we hit the drums different. Everything from him being a left-handed drummer to you know, my physicality, like everything. We're just very different drummers. For Freeman, he was stoked because I hit hard, I go off hard, I'll land a fill in time and things that he just, it was suddenly like he got a click track to play with, you know, and like it was rad, and vice versa for me, because keep in mind that the bass player I had been playing with learned to play bass playing our first record, you know? So no disrespect to him, but Jeff was a million miles away from Matt Freeman, you know? And so all of a sudden I'm getting to play with this bass player that's like these just 16th notes of just insanity. And I get to just play with those beats and or those rhythms and notes and melodies. And like, it was incredible, dude. Like, so him and I just instantly clicked where like every note just fell in right with my beat, and there was so much pocket that like you know, you'd think like a fast punk rock song could only have so much pocket, but it just felt deep, you know. And like,
Yeah.
and then the guitars, I mean, they're just doing fucking rad chords, and they're there to be like the energy painting over top of this wild rhythm that Matt Freeman's doing. And so again, it kind of was like, it just locked in, and it instantly within like, I would say during our first show, Lars would talk about how, because he's like lays down the rhythm, you know, he's really like holding it down as far as guitars. And he would just instantly know and could anticipate my little isms that would let him know I was going to do something there, or a fill or whatever. And all of a sudden we were just all like, I'd swear the first show, it just was clicked in and has been clicked in ever since.
And do you guys would no click in your ears or anything like that when you play? Or is there click sometimes?
Live?
Yeah.
Oh, never.
No. Just all organic.
No. I don't think anybody would go for that.
Yeah.
It's just a in the moment kind of vibe, and we're wild. Our set's different every single night. Sometimes we change it on stage. You know, like
Sick.
Everything's just wild. We don't have like big crazy lights and production. It's just really grassroots, like punk rock show vibe.
Sick.
You know,
sick.
And even in the studio, man, like there's only sometimes we even record to a click in the studio, just because it's a vibe, you know. Like if Gerwitz is like feeling something and thinks we should just do it organically, we will.
Yeah.
Like I always loved playing to a click. I don't like how stale things can become to a click, because sometimes a part might need to be a little faster or slower. Sometimes a dope like Anthony chorus should be slowed down a little. But we don't really do that. And so our stuff can be pretty straightforward and not sound stale like it's to a click. And I would hope that the listener wouldn't be able to tell the difference which songs are to a click and which aren't, you know, like in the way that I would hope that the ones to a click sound like raw enough that you wouldn't think it, and the ones not to a click aren't all over the place. God damn, man, find the one. You know?
And I was in Kirsten from Zildjian's office the other day. I was in Los Angeles, and you know, she has a lot of the gold records, platinum records of all the bands she's worked with, and there was your Used one there. And I was talking to her about her husband, Dan, and Orange County drums and things like that. And then, you know, we were talking about all the sick Orange County artists and how Orange County was such a crazy thing back in the day. And then obviously you were on Orange County as well for like the longest amount of time. Did Dan make your kit? Do you know, or?
I don't think he personally did, because at the time he was touring with Travis and has been Travis's tech for so long. That I think by the time I was with the company, Blink was so busy that he was just on the road pretty much full time. But the guys at the shop, Mike and some of those guys, would be the ones to build my drums. They did such a good job. I'll never forget, like, I had my very first kit I got. It blew my mind, the idea of like having a drum endorsement when I was making the first record, and Darren from Goldfinger had the number of a guy that was the artist relations guy at Orange County. And so he gave me his contacts. I reached out to him like, hey, I'm this like new drummer in this band, and this, you know, we just signed to Warner. We're doing Warped Tour, and like trying to like hype myself up. And they gave me like the most like entry level like discount, like sure, like, you know, kind of thing, which was rad. So generous of them and cool. And then I'll never forget, later that year, we got the Boxcar Racer tour. And we went on tour with those guys.
What?
And dude, it was rad because the first ever Boxcar Racer show was in Hollywood, and we played that show, and we played every show those guys ever played. The Used was on. And
where was the first show at? Do you know the venue? Do you remember the venue?
It was in Hollywood. It was the Warped Tour kickoff party.
Right.
If I rack my brain enough, I would absolutely remember where it is.
Oh man, that's
right now.
What a lineup, bro! What a lineup.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then we had H2O on that tour, and man, we just had so much fun. It was so rad getting to those guys and getting to be around Travis's greatness and seeing him play. You know, was was inspiring because I've always been one of those ones that like I respect and appreciate what he does, but I wasn't one of those people that like wants to run out and try to be him. And it would it always kind of like, it was like I'd get compared to him a lot. I mean, if I'm wearing a flat billed hat and have tattoos and sleeveless shirts, it was like I was always like, you know, people call me the poor man's Travis Barker and shit. And it's like, come on, like I'm not trying to be that dude. Like he's fucking great, but he's a totally different kind of drummer, and he's so fucking good. Like nothing but respect, but I'm not trying to be that guy, you know. But it was just rad to be around him and Daniel and get to like see how professional and his setup and the way Daniel would do things. I learned so much on that tour. And then Daniel had gifted me this snare he had made for me that was like an acrylic, like 20 ply thick, like, but just clear acrylic with 2-inch vents.
Yeah.
And it was like this screamer of a snare that he made for me. It was so sick. And he convinced me to start playing with my snare more lean forward because I was breaking snare heads.
Right.
And he's like, dude, like your snare is leaning towards you too much. Like, and the way you hit and how hard you hit, you're coming down. And like, I mean, the angle of the snare, I mean, it wasn't that dramatic, but the angle of the snare and then your stick, it's just like, you're puncturing the head. Like, and so I slowly started like flattening it out until it was actually like leaned away from me a bit, like not full Buddy Rich, but it was like leaning away a little bit. And sure enough, never broke a head again after that. But,
wow.
And then after that, like Daniel and Orange County were just so generous and rad to me for years. Like they were awesome.
Do you play rim shots predominantly when you're hitting snares?
I do. I have, and I don't know if it's a bad habit or
I do as well. I love rim shots.
But what doesn't like it is my wrists anymore. You know, like that shit hurts. Like, well, I had a car accident in 2017. And it jarred the hell out of my wrists. Right. And ever since then, rim shots send the worst pain through my entire hand. No. And I've done so much like physical therapy and things to try to get that better. But I've actually had to kind of flatten my snare back out a bit and try to ease up on rim shots just because of that pain I get. That sucks because I've been so like, I tried so hard to just take care of my wrists and you know, warm up really well and cool down really well and things to get some longevity out of my bones, you know, and my joints. Yeah. But that was really frustrating. So I've had to kind of adjust a little bit. And ever since that wreck, I have to play a little differently and kind of pick and choose. I mean, with Rancid, it would be different if I was playing the used stuff again, because the amount of notes I'm hitting in a 3.5-minute song, you know, is less than I would hit in a verse and chorus of a Rancid song, you know? And so I just can't hit all those notes at 11 anymore. I've got to like chill out because I'm playing thousands and thousands of notes every night that I just can't hit them like that anymore without destroying my body, you know?
Yeah. It's such a physical way, like the way you play, so physical, man. Yeah.
I love that though. It was always like, I mean, that was why I got into it, and what I loved about it was just the aggression and the way you could turn it into this like therapy session, you know? Like I said and touched on, my home life was pretty fucked up and ugly, and so I'd get home and just scream and cry and play drums, you know, like until my hands were bleeding, and it was like all of a sudden it started to groove, and it was that shit saved my life, but it's like that was my punching bag. You know, and so to have to hit the punching bag light sucks. Like, no, like, but it's nice. Like when I'm just sitting here at home and like when I play, I can beat the shit out of my drums and still play hard.
Yeah, nice.
When I'm playing like a mid-tempo jam or like, dude, I still play our stuff from the Used, like, 'cause I love that shit. And like when I play those songs, I can still play them like I did, you know, which is a good feeling. But it's when I'm just playing. You know, we play like 27 to 30 plus songs a night with Rancid. And,
how long's your set? Like
those tempos and stuff.
Like how long?
It depends on the show.
Yeah,
like maybe 90 minutes at a headline show or something, which shouldn't be much. But I mean, when you're 30 songs or whatever, it's like
fast.
That's just a lot of notes, you know. And so it's one of those things. Like the stamina, like I'm stoked. I've still got. I'm not getting any younger. Or skinnier or anything like that by any means. But it's one of those things that like I can still hold up stamina wise and love
Mm.
it. But it's just a matter of like my wrist now. I've gotta be smart because I'm gonna do this for another 20 years, and I want to make my shit last. So, sorry about that.
No, all good. One other thing I quickly wanted to touch on, you've been very
Yeah.
generous with your time, by the way. This has been sick.
Oh yeah.
As I was saying, I watched that Zildjian clip and I've seen on your Instagram, there's a lot of posts about your cars. There's a lot of posts about the fun activities you do. There's a lot of Ken Block stuff on there as well. Obviously you were good mates with him. And it's obviously super sad what's happened to him. But I just thought it was kind of cool because I work for Monster Energy in Australia, and we had Ken Block out here twice over the duration of my time with Monster. And the first one he did his gymkhana out at this old racetrack here, and it was a whole big Monster Energy thing, and I think that's when he had his little maybe it was the little Ford Fiesta or something. It was one of his first.
Oh, okay. Probably the Focus RS or something.
Yeah, the Focus.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of pretty early on when he was doing the Gymkhana, and we had like this whole thing. Like it was a couple of thousand people, heaps of our customers and stuff, and he actually was giving people rides in his car, which I'm sure you probably did.
Right. I never did, unfortunately. I never did. Yeah.
And then we did another event with him in Adelaide. So we have the V8 supercars out here, which is like our version of NASCAR. But instead of going around a circle, they go like through the streets of Adelaide or whatever, they're different types of circuits. And we had Ken Block out for Monster. And so what he would do, he would go out and do his gymkhana like as a bit of a showcase, live TV, blah, blah. And then he would drive his car into the Monster Energy compound, and we had like this stage, and I was playing drums with a DJ on one side of the stage with a big LED screen behind us. So we're playing, and there's all these people watching, and a bit of a concert thing going on. And then Ken would he would come from the back of the Monster compound, walk through the crowd, get in his car, because his car was parked behind our LED screen, and then he would drive off. So there'd be 1,000 people standing around just watching him walk through, and he'd jump in and drive off, out, do his circuit, and then come back in. And that was so sick, man. At one point, he pulled me and the DJ aside and just had a normal chat to us. Like, he gave us heaps. Like, he really gave us the time of day. And he's he's like, man, I love what you guys are doing. Like, this is so sick. Like, you guys are great.
Oh, right.
And he's like, it reminds me of, I had Travis and DJ AM play at one of my parties for DC, and I felt like I knew he's a legend, you're talking to him, but then he dropped something like that. I was like, oh my God, I wasn't even thinking like that. Like, this guy, what a guy, man.
Yeah. He had so many ties to music, and like hip hop and punk rock were like what he grew up on, and were so much of like inspiration for so much of what he did. I mean, he was such a creative mind that and it was just rad that, there was that punk rock and hip hop spirit and kind of ethos to everything he did, like you could see it in there, and it was sick, man. He was unlike anybody, something truly special. And not just his talents, but who he was as a person, one of the best fathers and friends and just people I've ever known, like he was one of my biggest inspirations, and it goes so far beyond him as a driver,
Yeah,
but
of course.
We had some wild times, and just, getting rowdy in our little off-road, like Can-Am side-by-side things, and playing in sand dunes and dirt, and whether we're like downhill mountain biking or snowboarding or whatever we were doing, man, there was never doing anything mild with Ken. Like, it was crazy. Like, as you saw with those events and everything, the guy was like, the rest of us, when we max out at 10, he's at 13, I mean? Like, and one of my favorite things about him that I've told a lot of people this year, was like that kind of example, like, you know, like where we think our best is at a 10 and what we think we're all capable of. And I would credit him to being that like 13. But what I loved about Ken is that he saw in everyone around him more than a 10 as well, to entertain the metaphor. And it was like, if we were going mountain biking, if we were riding our Can-Ams in the sand dunes or something, like, he would push you to do shit that you didn't think you were capable of. But like, my favorite thing was like, he would always joke with me, you know, like he'd tell me about some crazy shit we were going to go do, and I'd be hesitant and nervous. And he's like, I promise I won't get you killed, you know?
Yeah.
and I was just like, you know what? I trust this guy. Like, I believe him. And then like, when we do something, he'd just be like, you can do it. You can do it. As if it's nothing. And it's like, dude, what you're asking me to do right now is far above what I'm capable of. And like, but again, I trust this guy. I trusted him with my life many, many, many times. And it was incredible because in a roundabout way, he would teach you to believe in yourself more, because he believed in me more than I believed in me, but I trusted him. And so in turn, I guess I believed in myself more, you know? And it was that was like the Ken Block magic, where it was just like, what I thought I was capable at 10 o'clock, and he's doing it at 13, he would believe I could do 11.
Yeah.
And I would, just because he believed I could. And like, so it was amazing, man. Like, he elevated everything he did in his life, but he didn't just elevate he elevated everybody around him too. And it was so unique and special that no one I've ever known other than Ken had that effect on me or the people around them. Like, it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I could tell. I could tell that you guys had a great relationship just from looking from the outside. So that's cool to hear that's what it was. You know what I mean? That's really
I appreciate
nice.
it.
Yeah, and well, mate, this has been an epic chat. You've been so generous with your time.
Thank you. No,
mate,
it's been a lot of fun.
Man, I've loved just sitting here and just hearing you talk about these things. Because as I said, I've been following your journey from as soon as the Used came on the scene. I was there watching and looking up to you as a drummer and the way you played and everything, man. And, you know, it's great to see what you've done and where you are now. And like, the journey's been going for so long, you know, and you're crushing it still, you know.
Thank you. I feel so fortunate, man, but I'm also a hard worker and ambitious, and I'm a passionate person, as you see. Like, I'm just into so many things, and anything I do, I don't know. I guess the goal is to just make life fun, right? Like,
yeah, man.
I just want to have fun, and that doesn't mean not work. Yeah. Because to me, like, work, it should be fun. Like,
100%.
It's like fuck making money. Like, that's not what I would call work, you know. But it's like that gratification of like setting out to do something. And I don't care if I'm landscaping my yard, or I'm writing a song, or I'm, you know, playing on a lake. Like, I want to do what I'm doing the best I can, and I want to make it fun, you know. And otherwise, it's like, why would I waste my time? Our time is short here, you know. That's the one thing that's for certain. And as sadly we learned from Ken, and it's like, oh, we got to make the best of every fucking day and every moment, you know. And I mean, not to be cheesy, but that was the whole point with, here I am, it's in my hand, I'll savor every moment of this, you know. And it's been what, 20 plus years of savoring every moment, for sure. For sure,
man. Well, 100%. It shows with everything that you do. So it's awesome, man. And
thank you
again, bro. Great to chat and connect, brother. Again, big fan. And
likewise,
and awesome just to have a good chat.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for the support, man. It means the world. Where, like, honestly, like I've always said, if it's not for the people that like get behind our music and our craft and what we do, I would be doing this shit in my bedroom by myself, you know. Like, I'd still be doing it for sure, but
100%.
I get to call it my job, you know, thanks to the people that support me and what I do. So I'm forever grateful for that, for sure.
And mate, and hopefully we'll see you in Oz at some point.
I hope so, man. I hope so. I've been fighting for it for years, so
yeah,
I hope so.
Nice, nice. All right, brother. Well, I'll leave you to it. Thanks so much for jumping on, man. And we'll chat We'll chat afterwards. I'll keep you in the loop with when this is coming out and stuff.
Rad. Sounds good, man.
Mate, legend. All right. Thanks so much, bro.
Thank you. Appreciate you, brother.
Cheers. Have a great night, man.